Hello and welcome to Maximum Disc, a show where I celebrate physical media and talk about films that I own on Blu Ray and 4K Blu Ray. I'm James Adamson, I'm a co-host on the Double Reel Film Podcast. If you like this show, please do check out Double Reel. It's a magazine-style podcast made by people who love movies as much as you do. We talk about various films, topics and ideas. We think if you check out any episode of ours, you'll come away with a bunch of great recommendations of something to watch instead of just doing what the algorithm tells you. So now to physical media. I talk about it because I think it matters. If you really care about a film, you need to own it on disc. Streaming's not going to cut it. It won't likely be the version that really tells the story of the film properly if there's ever a director's cut or anything like that. And it's not going to look and sound the way it should on a compressed streaming file. You need to own it on disc. Hopefully I'm preaching to the choir on that one. So for each episode, I talk about one film that I own. Obviously, the reason people tune into a review of this is to find out what the video and sound is like. Is it a good transfer of the original film? So we'll go into that. I'm not the best person to talk about the true depth of black in every corner and the detailed pixel rate and everything else, but I do talk about the sound and video and hopefully give you a good idea of what that's like. I also like to talk about the film itself, what it's about, my relationship to it, you know, when I first watched it, how I came to care about it enough to want to own it and all of those things. And at the end of it, hopefully it'll give you an idea if it's a disc that you should buy or need to buy. So today I'm going to be talking about Lawrence of Arabia on Blu Ray. Now, this is a big one. Lawrence of Arabia is one of the leading films whenever anybody talks about great sound quality, great picture quality in particular. I'm talking about 4K because at this point I don't actually own a 4K disc of Lawrence of Arabia. It's really hard to get hold of. I am trying to get hold of that, and more on that later. But for everyone else who's struggling and looking around and seeing that a 4K version of Lawrence of Arabia is going for £700 on eBay, the question is, well, could I live with the regular Blu-ray? So we're going to go into that and talk about that disc in particular. So Lawrence of Arabia itself came out in 1962, kind of a legendary film. Directed by David Lean, who was on a hell of a run at that point. He went from Bridge on the River Kwai to Lawrence of Arabia to Dr. Zhivago. He became synonymous with this incredible sweeping storytelling of great dramatic events and powerful human stories within them. The script is by Robert Bolt, a frequent collaborator with David Lean, a leading playwright as well as screenwriter famous for things like A Man for All Seasons. This is the first of 3 times he worked with David Lean. David Lean's a legend among film directors. The BAFTA Award for Best Director is named after him. He won the Best Director Oscar twice himself, was nominated another 5 times, and also had nominations for screenwriting and editing. So an absolute giant of filmmaking. It's obviously extremely well known for its desert scenes and everything else. At the time, the cast was a pretty star-packed, and you'll still have heard of some of them. Peter O'Toole, Omar Sharif, Alec Guinness, who frequently appeared in David Lean films. You've also got supporting roles for people like Jack Hawkins, Claude Rains, Anthony Quell and Jose Ferrer. It's an almost exclusively male cast. It's a very kind of male film. It's an epic about, you know, men's adventures in the early part of the 20th century. Cinematography is by the equally legendary Freddie Young. He's won 3 Oscars for Best Cinematography, all for David Lean films. A long and glittering career. He's held up as one of the absolute leading lights of great cinematography along the lines of like Roger Deakins today. Of the large sound team who worked on the film, the name listed for awards nominations is John Cox. Maurice Jarre provided the score, which is prominently featured in the film, including an introduction and intermission, and it is an important part of the film. In terms of awards and nominations, this was a behemoth at the awards for that year. It was nominated for 10 Oscars and won 7, including Best Director, Best Picture, Cinematography, Sound. Maurice Jarre won Best Score, and it won Best Film Editing as well. Of the awards it missed out on, the big one is Peter O'Toole, who might have hoped to win Best Actor. It's his performance of a lifetime, but he had the bad luck to be up against Gregory Peck playing Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. That's probably the biggest surprise of the time. Although perhaps not a surprise when you realise how beloved Gregory Peck was in Hollywood. This is an epic, almost 4-hour story of a real-life historical figure, T.E. Lawrence. It opens with him dying in a motorcycle crash in the 1930s and then tells the story in flashback from there. It tells the story of him when he was in the British military, essentially being sent to deal with the Arab groups in World War I that Allied forces hoped to join up with to defeat the particularly the Turks in the Middle East, where the Ottoman Empire was like a major theatre of war. He becomes an almost mythical figure, both to the British, who can't understand how he's got this understanding of the Arabs that no one else does. He's also becomes a mythical figure among the Arabs that he works with. He's got an understanding of them that they truly appreciate. He's so bold and so talented and performs what seems to them to be the impossible. And in fact, he performs what seems to everybody to be the impossible in terms of victories, uniting people, taking on the opposition. And at the same time, he actually believes in the Arab people being their own nation and determining their own future, rather than just being a piece on the board for the British or Allied forces and just a colony after the war. And that causes a lot of tension, really on all sides. So when he befriends and mobilizes and leads to a number of stunning victories, you follow that in the story. But then at the end, the aims of the West and the aims of his beloved Arabs at the end of the war are not the same. And he feels like he's got divided loyalties, and he feels it's like not going to end well for everybody. There's so much more than that to the film. It's, as well as being like a depiction of fascinating and groundbreaking historical events, it's a character study of a number of the leading characters, not just the main character Lawrence, but also Omar Sharif as Sharif Ali, his friend with whom he has a complex but very deep relationship. Some of the British generals and politicians that he gets involved with as well. So it's what David Lean became known for, which was great, epic. I mean, epic doesn't even begin. The grandeur of the storytelling and the historical sweep is so huge, but he also paints these pictures of equally huge individual characters and how these stories affect them. So it's regarded as one of the greatest and best looking films of one time. It's believed to be a must to own for people who want to test and show off their home cinema and so on. Especially like desert scenes and epic battle scenes and everything else. So going into it, that's what Lawrence of Arabia has a reputation for. My background with the film is I'm probably a little bit of a latecomer to this. I mean, this film came out before I was born. Always being talked about when I was getting into films. One of those films that always mentioned as one of the best of David Lean, one of the best directors. Lawrence of Arabia is seen as his best film. I must have seen it on TV sometime growing up. You'll always see lots of references to it, like montages. If it's like a great movie or epic movie kind of montage on TV or YouTube, there'll be some Lawrence of Arabia in there. Probably saw some of his other films before this, but it was in the water. It was everywhere for me, but not necessarily a film that I'd sat down and paid really, really close attention to. Then more recently, I got a Blu Ray player, and in 2013, I bought this film on Blu Ray to test my home cinema. There was no 4K available at the time. I mean, maybe they'd brought one out, but I could not find it anywhere to buy. So I bought the best Blu Ray edition I could get at the time to test my home cinema. I was absolutely blown away by it. In all honesty, I think I might like or be more engaged by the stories of Dr. Zhivago and Bridge over the River Kwai more out of David Lean's films. I may be in the minority there, to be honest, but there's no doubting the sheer cinematic achievement here. There's nothing quite like it. So let's start with the disc. The disc is the 50th Anniversary Blu Ray that came out. It's a standard case, not a steelbook. At the time when you were buying things in 2013, it came with an ultraviolet digital copy, if you remember those. There are loads of extras on a bonus Blu-ray disc, which is, making of, interviews, storyboards, illustrations, trailers, and so on. There's lots of history to this film. David Lean was the sort of person who would spend years and years absolutely perfecting the film that he was making. On the lines of someone like, Kurosawa or Kubrick, although Kubrick was probably even more so than this. And so it's a pretty packed edition. It's also something that had a lot of restoration work done it. In terms of the history of this film, it came out on, normal celluloid film, because that's what all films were in the 60s. I think the quality of the film degraded. The version that people were watching on TV was not a very good copy. Then there was a big effort to restore it in 1988, and then for the 50th anniversary, they built on that with a full 4K remaster. So the 50th anniversary is a pretty packed disc for at the time, when people weren't talking about 4K Blu-ray as much as they were. This would have been a pretty leading copy. Let's talk about the video now. I'm almost stuck for words about what the picture of this looks like. I mean, I just, I've got some notes here, and the first word is just wow in capital letters. And I will try and put some more eloquent words around that, but it's absolutely incredible. Just to go into that, this film was shot on 70mm, which is, if you're going to get really technical, it's 65mm film blown up to 70mm. What that means is that it's at least twice the size of any other film stock, which has a great deal of like color detail and depth of richness of color and clarity that really no other film stock can compare to. Digital still doesn't compare to it. It also provides for a great deal of kind of scope for good sound, so we'll talk about that when it comes to the sound. The original restoration did a lot to bring it back. David Lean's approval in 1988, gave it a lot of detailed improvements to bring it back to what it should be. Then with the modern technology available to take a restored film copy and do a 4K remaster scan and really bring it out, this gives new meaning to the word painstaking. So it's a very, very, very detailed restoration and remaster that gets close to what the quality of the video should be. If you really want to see this in its full glory, you need to see, if you are near to a cinema, a repertory cinema which will show it in 70mm on a big screen, and then you'll get something which is well beyond any kind of home theatre can do for you. But this is really, really great. I mean, where do I start? Obviously, it's a huge widescreen presentation of T.E. Lawrence in the desert, and it makes full use of that. There are these massive shots of like deserts and rocks and battle scenes just fully shown, and an epic story needs an epic look, and that's what it's got. One thing I'd say is that it's actually quite rare for early 60s colour films to look this perfect, and that comes down to David Lean and Freddie Young's cinematography. Prior to this, David Lean films The Bridge on the River Kwai, which was a Best Picture winner, is a great film. I want to talk about that at a later date as well. That's 1950s Technicolor, and you can tell the difference. This is out of this world. I mean, what can I say? I mean, having gone through this for the show and looked back at scenes that would best show off the picture and cinematography, I ended up watching the whole bloody thing because it's such a compelling story. But what are the words I've got written down here for the video? Vivid, richness, depth. I mean, there are scenes of sunset or sunrise which are just incredible. There's a scene of one of Lawrence's Arab allies getting lost in the desert and walking through, and it's just got colours and detail of the sand and the faces of the people stuck out in the hot weather, with just an unparalleled amount of kind of vivid, powerful colour. There's really nothing like this. So if you want to see a blue sky, if you want to see the sand and desert and rocks, the battle scenes just seem to go on forever. There's obviously a famous scene in which Omar Sharif appears on the back of a camel walking towards Lawrence and his guide, which seems to go on forever, because what it does is it tells you that the desert just goes on forever. It's long and flat and thousands of miles long, and nothing could give you a better impression, apart from actually being there, of this desert world that Lawrence of Arabia occupies. Peter O'Toole himself is like something like recently Oppenheimer, where people are asking, well, why have you shot this on IMAX when it's really just like people in the room and a lot of close-ups? That close-up of people on such a huge screen, huge kind of film resolution and everything else. Peter O'Toole looks absolutely extraordinary in this film. Omar Sharif, what a film star he was. They look absolutely incredible, and the detail on their faces, of all the people's faces, it really is. It feels like, I'm struggling for words, and the image will do better, but it's like Michelangelo sculpted these great figures from history, and then they were coloured in by the person who's got the best possible command of colour, and then they start walking around you in this kind of immersive surround. The video is absolutely incredible. Now, a great deal of this is obviously the quality of the film. The cinematographer is one of the best of all time. The director is one of the best of all time, and it's on the best available film stock. At the same time, though, this remaster is so good that the Blu-ray just looks incredible. What I've also done sort of in the intervening years is that when sort of streaming started to develop and there was UHD 4K streaming available, I thought, for the sake of it, let me see what Lawrence of Arabia looks like in 4K on an Amazon digital copy that I bought. And it was about $5.99 on offer, so I thought, go on then. And, you know, the reason I'm doing a show about physical media and not about streaming should tell you what I'm about to say. The streaming's not the same. Digital 4K is fine, it looks good, it's crisp, it's very clear, but the Blu-ray is absolutely streets ahead. You know, looking at comparable scenes of people getting lost in the desert or the sweeping shot across like a rocky terrain going into battle, it's very clear and crisp, but the sheer depth and richness of the image on this Blu-ray, the texture, it's just miles better. So I just can't say enough about this. This is more real than life, the video on this. It's absolutely incredible. Unsurprisingly, I'm sure anyone watching this has probably read or seen some other discussions of Lawrence of Arabia's video. I think it's very important to make this particular point that anyone who tells you that 4K streaming is anything like the real thing, it really isn't, because the Blu-ray is absolutely miles and miles ahead of any streaming version of this film, no matter how good. I can only imagine how good the 4K would be if I ever get hold of that. Now to the sound. Again, the first word that I've written on my notes for sound is also wow. It is, again, it won Best Sound. They brought in sound engineers of the highest quality. Again, the film stock is of the highest quality, not just for the image, but for the sound as well. You name a sound and it's incredible. The wind across the desert, the battle sounds, plane flying, trains exploding, bullets, thundering hoofbeats and everything else. The night scenes could not be better. And, you know, the sounds of the desert, you know, whether that's silent, broken by a few moments of noise or something else, it's just incredible. So it's no surprise that the sound was award-winning. I'm reliably informed by the back of the Blu-ray case that this is DTS-MA51. It's not Dolby, but the sound is absolutely gorgeous. You get all the reverb and surround you could possibly ask for. You hear everything with perfect clarity. Whether it's the entire desert exploding, like I said, you can feel the sound hitting different parts of the room in the big set pieces particularly, but it's pretty immersive the whole time. It's just an example of everything about the original film and everything about this 50th anniversary Blu-ray has been put together with so much care and attention. And obviously Maurice Jarre's score is very stylish as well. I think Maurice Jarre also did the score for Dr. Zhivago, so you've got a similar feel. There's a great deal of like sweeping orchestral music jumping in, but it's just perfectly done. It's just everything about this film just could not be better done, and this Blu-ray gets as close as you can to how good it would be to watch this on the big screen. So overall, what would I say about this? I think this is a great film. I do think, and this is probably a matter of personal taste, The Bridge on the River Kwai, the other great David Lean, you know, Oscar-winning epic film, I like its examination of like the power structures of the British military, the characters of the people involved. I find it more engaging than this. Lawrence of Arabia is a bit of I get it. I feel his love for the area, and I understand what it's about. It's beautifully done. It's beautifully acted. It's well written. I don't know. I just found that I engage a little bit more with The Bridge on the River Kwai. There's certain irony to that story, and Dr. Zhivago I engage with a little bit more. But in terms of sheer achievement of storytelling, of sound and vision and everything else, this film is really out on its own. And that's why people say, you know, list your best films of all time. Lawrence of Arabia is going to be on that list. Of course it is. Is it an essential purchase? Now, first of all, absolutely. A physical copy on disc of Lawrence of Arabia is absolutely essential to anyone who wants to own anything on physical media and wants to see films that look and sound good. Lawrence of Arabia is absolutely essential. I think the verdict versus digital is pretty obvious. It's simply not the same on a digital stream. Don't even bother. The compressed file can't compete with this. A properly like engineered Blu-ray disc with a great remastered transfer on it, upscaled on your 4K player and TV. There is nothing that a streamed version of this will ever do. The original picture quality is peerless, and you need a disc to get you there. Of course, this 50th anniversary is beautifully done. Of course, the question's going to come up is, what about the 4K? Now, the main thing is the 4K is really hard to get hold of. Full disclosure, I've seen it coming back into stock. I have it on pre-order, and I'll talk about that when I get it, hopefully. I've still got that fear that will say, I'm sorry, I know you pre-ordered it, but it's out of stock. So I'll believe it when it's in my hand, and then I'll talk about it. But I think what's useful to talk about now is, what about this Blu-ray version, this 50th anniversary Blu-ray that was so lovely put together? Is this a decent choice to buy? And I think it is, because the quality is so good. And, I don't know where you're watching this from, but in the UK on Amazon right now, you can buy the disc I'm talking about, for £6.74, okay? Now, that's the cost of a coffee and a muffin in Starbucks most of the time nowadays. So it's not very much for an incredibly good quality physical copy of this film. No doubt if it comes out and it's available, and it's going to cost a lot more than that. If you can get hold of the 4K, you should probably hold out for that. But if you think it's going to be hard to get hold of a 4K, you should buy this, because this is as good as it gets without actually reaching out into the undreamed of depths of a Lawrence of Arabia 4K film. This is as good as it gets. This is as good as some 4K discs that I own. It's absolutely incredible. So I think it is an essential purchase, unless your finger is right now hovering over an affordable copy of the 4K. There is a 60th anniversary as well, so you might want to look into the 60th anniversary normal Blu-ray disc rather than the 50th. They did some more restore, but I think it's pretty similar in terms of the sound and everything else. A lot of the hard work to get this film done the way it should be has already been done. But yes, this is an essential purchase, so long as if you've got 700 quid to spend on the eBay, full version, go for it. But let's just say an essential purchase is a physical copy of this. You've got to. If you don't have it already, you've got to go out and do it. I couldn't be more clear than that. So that's Lawrence of Arabia. I hope that's told you something you need to know. I think it was worth talking about the Blu-ray, and when I talk about the 4K, there'll obviously be a chance to do some comparison when that eventually arrives. But that's this episode's celebration of physical media on the Lawrence of Arabia Blu-ray. Thank you very much for joining me. Once again, if you enjoyed the show, please do check out Double Reel. Ways to find the podcast on our socials will be on screen in a few moments. And in any event, we'll see you next time for more physical media chat right here on Maximum Disc. The Maximum Disc YouTube channel is brought to you by Double Reel, the monthly magazine podcast for the discerning film nerd. If you like our celebration of physical media, please check out the podcast for more chat about the films we love and hate.